Real-life stories you might not know. Part 4. The Tragedy of Piedad Martínez Pérez, a chilling true story. In the sun-soaked city of Murcia, on Spain's southeastern coast, a girl named Piedad Martínez Pérez was born in 1953, the third of 10 children, 11 if you count the infant brother who died at just 2 months old. Piedad's life was marked from the start by poverty, hardship, and survival. Her father, a bricklayer, and her mother, a part-time kitchen worker, struggled to support their large family in the crime-ridden neighborhood of El Carmen. Yet, for all their misfortunes, no one could have imagined the darkness that would one day descend upon the Martínez Pérez household. By Christmas 1965, 12-year-old Piedad was no ordinary girl. With both parents and her 2 older brothers working long hours, she practically raised her younger siblings, Jesus, Cristina, Manuela, Andrés, Fuensanta, Mariano, and baby María del Carmen. She cooked, cleaned, babysat, and even helped her brothers polish motorbike parts with a strange, chemical-laced bar they brought home from the auto shop. Then the nightmare began. On December 4th, baby María del Carmen, just 9 months old, suddenly developed a rash, high fever, and violent seizures. She was dead within half an hour. The doctor called it meningitis. 5 days later, little Mariano, 2 years old, died the same horrific way. Another 5 days passed, and 4-year-old Fuensanta followed. Now rumors of a deadly, mysterious illness swept through El Carmen. Authorities stepped in. The remaining family members were taken to a hospital and placed under observation, while the children's bodies were exhumed for further autopsies. No trace of infection was found, only evidence of poison. The deaths occurred precisely 5 days apart, from youngest to oldest, and the clock was still ticking. On January 4th, 5-year-old Andrés died, his final moments a mirror image of his siblings. This time, toxicologists detected DDT and potassium cyanide in his tissues. Someone was murdering these children. Suspicion fell on the parents, but one detail couldn't be ignored. Each child had been alone with Piedad before they died. Detectives noted the girl's unnerving calm, her cold demeanor. One officer decided to test a theory. He took Piedad to a cafe, pretending to spike her drink with the same chemical used for polishing metal parts. Piedad's alarmed reaction gave her away. Finally, she confessed. "It was me who killed the 4 of them," she admitted, calmly detailing how she mixed poison-laced balls with food and milk. She claimed her mother ordered the first 3 murders, though investigators later dismissed this as one of several conflicting stories. The truth was simpler and more chilling. Piedad was tired of caring for them. She wanted time to play with her friends. Psychiatrists found her to be intelligent, aware of right and wrong, and utterly remorseless. At just 12 years old, she was diagnosed as a psychopath. Piedad Martínez Pérez was too young for prison. She was sent to a convent for delinquent girls, where she reportedly thrived, knitting and making friends. She vanished from public records after turning 21. Her fate a mystery to this day. The tragedy didn't end there. The Martínez Pérez family was forever marked by infamy. Several of Piedad's brothers later fell into crime. One even committed murder. Their parents died in poverty, shunned by their community. And so, a cruel irony lingered. The name Piedad means mercy in Spanish, a mercy she never showed her innocent siblings. How a top physicist got catfished into drug trafficking. Richard Feynman said, "Never confuse education with intelligence. You can have a PhD and still be an idiot." What are some real-life examples of this? This is Paul Frampton. He was an English theoretical physicist and a physics and astronomy professor at the University of North Carolina. He got catfished into transporting drugs and was sentenced to almost 5 years in prison in Argentina. You know, I saw the headline of his story and I thought, what an idiot. but as I read the article, I felt a little sorry for him. Paul was 68 and was very lonely. He had been divorced 3 years prior and had no kids. November 2011, he started chatting with someone on a dating app. This person, who called herself Denise Milani, said she was a Czech bikini model. They would exchange text messages every day, sometimes for hours. They fell in love. Well, at least Paul did. It didn't matter that Paul had never even heard her voice on the phone, much less had a video chat with her. The lengthy text messages and emails they exchanged was enough to convince him what they felt for each other was real. They made plans. They would meet up, they would get married. Paul would have another chance at having his forever person. Denise asked him to come to Bolivia, where she was doing a photo shoot. January 2012, Paul set out for Bolivia. When he arrived, Denise messaged him that she suddenly had been called to another city for an emergency photo shoot. Which city? Brussels, Belgium. She arranged for him to fly there, via Argentina. There was one little request that she had. He must bring her a suitcase she left behind. You know, since she had that emergency shoot she had to go to last minute, she forgot a suitcase. At night, someone brought to his hotel a black suitcase and she told him to go out and get it. He found the suitcase was empty. "Why bring you an empty suitcase?" he texted her. She told him it had sentimental value. Of course it did. Inking with everything but his brain, he decided to make use of her empty suitcase and packed his dirty clothes in it. He also didn't find it odd at all that she had been paying for all his airfares so far. When he arrived in Argentina, he was stopped at the airport, searched. In the lining of Denise's suitcase with his clothes in it, they found 2 kilograms of cocaine. He faced up to 16 years in prison, but luckily for him, his lawyers successfully convinced the judge and jury he was just a clueless victim of a romance scam. He was sentenced to 4 years and 8 months in prison, November 19, 2012. He was asked how he believed an attractive young bikini model chatting him was not a catfish. He said, "Well, I have been accused of having a huge ego." The romance scammer convinced a harmless-looking Englishman to take several flights out to Bolivia, pick up a suitcase lined with cocaine, and they probably would have muled him to Belgium if he hadn't been caught. Quite impressive levels of catfishing and drug trafficking. Why giant insects no longer rule the skies. A prehistoric tale of oxygen, predators, and extinction. Let me take you back in time, not just a few centuries, not even a few millennia, but hundreds of millions of years ago, to a world ruled by monsters, not just on land and sea, but in the skies. Picture this: dragonflies the size of crows, beetles bigger than your head, and centipedes long enough to wrap around a car. It sounds like something out of a science fiction horror film, but it was very real. So why don't we see creatures like that today? Why don't modern insects grow to monstrous sizes anymore? Well, the answer lies in a strange quirk of nature, and it all starts with how insects breathe. Unlike mammals, insects don't have lungs. Instead, they breathe through tiny openings in their bodies called spiracles, little holes that connect directly to their tissues through a series of air tubes. It's a simple system, but it has one major flaw. It works best when the animal is small. The bigger an insect gets, the more oxygen it needs, and the harder it is for that oxygen to travel through those narrow airways. And here's where the plot thickens, because believe it or not, the air we breathe today is very different from what it was back then. During the age of the dinosaurs and the Earth's atmosphere was rich with oxygen, far richer than today. Back then, oxygen levels could reach up to 35% compared to our modern-day 21%. In that supercharged atmosphere, giant insects thrived. The largest insect ever discovered was a prehistoric dragonfly called Meganeura, which soared through the air some 275 million years ago. With a wingspan of nearly 75 centimeters and weighing around 500 grams, it was roughly the size of a crow. But the reign of the giant insects wouldn't last forever. As time passed, the oxygen levels in Earth's atmosphere began to drop. And then came the birds, swift, agile, and hungry for a crunchy snack. These new predators made life even harder for the bulky, slow-moving insects. It was a double blow. The drop in oxygen made it difficult for larger insects to breathe and function, while predators made them easy targets. Natural selection did what it always does, and one by one, the giant insects vanished from the skies and forests of ancient Earth. Today, the world's insects are still numerous, but their sizes are modest. That's why you won't be chased by a dragonfly the size of a crow, or hear the flapping wings of a housefly the size of a dinner plate. The combination of a thinner atmosphere and relentless natural predators sealed the fate of these prehistoric titans. So next time you see a tiny mosquito or a harmless ladybug, remember, they're the distant, miniature descendants of creatures that once ruled the ancient skies. Thank goodness for that, and there are still some huge insects left. Titan Dynasty. Stick insect. Atlas butterfly. Hercules beetle. Queen Alexandra ornithopter. What is the saddest truth about smart people? The most intelligent man in the world has lived a miserable life. William James Sidis, the most intelligent man in history, son of Ashkenazi Jewish immigrants from Russia, born in New York on April 1, 1898. William was a wonderkind with a prodigious mind and an estimated IQ of 300. He was literally a human computer and a living dictionary. William J. Sidis never had a childhood or enjoyed being a little boy. Imagine for a moment an 18-month-old child who can unbelievably read the New York Times. At the age of 8, he was fluently speaking French, German, Russian, Turkish, Armenian, Latin, and his native language, English. When he was only 9 years old, he was successfully accepted into Harvard University. Let's get a little deeper and picture the same small child at 9 years of age, inventing a brand new language called Vendergood, studied by linguists and declared to be complete, correct, and fascinating. At the age of 12, he was giving his first lecture about the fourth dimension to the scientific community and the press. Because William was so intelligent, great things were expected of him, and a bright future was waiting for him. His parents, a famous Russian psychologist and one of the first female medical doctors of that time, had a very clear goal in mind: to raise a genius. They educated his mind and completely forgot the essential part: his heart and his feelings. William showed a solid willingness and patience to learn, but constantly being on display for the public and for the media traumatized him, and he began to rebel against everything in his complex and artificial life. He had severe emotional problems that he was never able to solve. They discovered his dead body in a small apartment in Boston in 1944. He was 46 years old, and he died from a stroke. I want to live the perfect life. The only way to live the perfect life is through seclusion. I have always hated crowds. William James Sidis. If you enjoyed this video, please give the channel a like and subscribe. Thank you so much.